Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be making, I guess, a pretty well desired or something I've been asked a lot when it comes to AFK Journey, and that is, of course, figuring out what to do when you fail or when you aren't able to proceed or pass through a stage. Sometimes, if you're in the Trial of Abyss now, or if you're in any stage, the AFK stages, whatever it is, you may encounter a stage that stumps you, that kind of makes it feel like no matter what units you have, no matter what gear you have, whatever it is, whatever resonance level you are, it feels really difficult. And today I'm going to tell you what you can do or things that you can try and overcome them. The first thing that I would say is the most important is that if you haven't seen it already, there's a little button here on the side. You should see it right here. It's a little paper and pencil. And if you haven't seen it already, take a look at what other people in your server or wherever have done to kind of see or kind of get an idea of how to clear things, how to structure things. Like think of the process that they do in order to overcome the stage. Now, if that doesn't work, or if it doesn't feel like some of the strategies are viable, or if it feels like you're still struggling, here's what I suggest. Number one, it's going to take a little bit of effort, and it is not a super easy kind of method, but you need to look at who you're fighting. If you already can, or if you can kind of already tell here, this composition has a couple of assassins. He has, of course, Vala, who is with the purple indicator, shooting my backline target that I have selected here, which is my Grandma Donnie. But there's also a Seth here, and if you aren't familiar with what some of the characters do, unfortunately, if you're stuck, you kind of have to read some of their skills. Naturally, for me, I can kind of already tell that for this composition, the Brutus isn't going to die. The Seth is going to kind of bounce around and kind of kill me. And then I am kind of on a ticking timer with Odie and the Muriel to get through this team. So for me, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've failed specifically with this team composition right here. And it kind of makes sense as to why I could fail here, right? Like, again, if Brutus is the one that doesn't end up dying fast enough, then like Seth could maybe go through my allies. It actually looks like I'm about to clear this, actually. So I guess I'm not struggling. But in the case that you do end up failing in a stage like this, something that you could do to kind of move things around or kind of shake things up so that you have a better chance of clearing, number one is positioning. Now, of course, everyone already knows that positioning is important, but how you want to position things or how the characters move is kind of its own thing, right? Now, of course, allies or most characters in the front, especially if they're melee, will move towards the front or try to hit whatever first comes in contact with them. But something that a lot of people don't also kind of think about is that, especially if you are someone that uses a lot of, if you specifically use Mr. Thorin, apologies, forgot his name for a sec, you probably don't recall that although he may be in the front, if he ends up dying, or if you are fighting an encounter where he kind of just goes down immediately, one of two things need to be done. Number one, you need to position someone that can tank or kind of sustain being hit directly behind him, or kind of take aggro after he's fallen for a second. So in this case, maybe that's taking someone like, a Grandma Donnie. Maybe it's someone like Tamesia. Whatever the case is, in that case, you may need to, again, position your units around differently so that you do have another front line. And that could definitely help out so that you don't have someone like Odie or someone like Cecia just get blitzed and die immediately. Same thing with your Smokey. If your Smokey can tank a little bit, that's nice. But if he's too tanky, all it's gonna happen is he's gonna get shot, he's gonna die, and immediately, like, the stage is over. You don't have a healer anymore. Furthermore, if you are at the point where you are really suffering too much, something that is kind of a really nice, I would say, positioning or kind of overcoming the odds kind of trick that I've noticed is, again, just using Brutus. Now, I know a lot of people talk about how strong Brutus is, primarily because he can't die, but similar to what I just mentioned before, if you are in a situation where Thorin can't do anything, even if your Thorin is Supreme Plus or anything crazy like that, it may be better to just let the Brutus tank up front, and then instead you just put Thorin behind him, or you don't use Thorin. Maybe you could use someone like Coco, because it kind of depends, of course, on what the team composition is here. You see there's Smokey, there's also a Viperian, there's also a Cecia, and there's like a very tanky kind of front line here. So I suspect that Brutus won't end up dying too quickly, but if Brutus, or if Thorin, whoever your tank is, ends up not dying fast enough, or if he was getting assassinated very quickly, something that would be kind of helpful, again, is taking as much aggro as you can, and rather trying to bum rush the opponents with a speedy DPS composition yourself. So in this case, let's pretend that Brutus could survive for the 5 seconds, but I need to do as much damage as possible. Maybe I run something like the Star Shard spell, and I use something like Rowan so I get more energy to my units, and I can immediately one-shot or, assassinate the backline. Additionally, if I find that someone like Odie isn't like fast enough and I need to really annihilate the backline or get rid of the backline as fast as possible, I can move them around. But whether or not I want to assassinate the healer in this case, or if I want to kill the Cannaaaa, who knows? Let's find out. So as you can see, I have Brutus here. He's getting pushed back. And like I said, it's really nice that in this case, although he is technically being pushed back, I do have the ability to survive for like 6 seconds unmitigated or undeterred by any of the enemy allies or by any of the enemies there. And because, again, Brutus took the brunt of the fight, that was supposed to be, I think, one of the harder fights because it's one of the 170, in-between row fights where it's like every 10 is harder. And in that case, the Brutus did well. Like, again, in terms of positioning, I was able to isolate him, put him across to the side where he would take the aggro of everyone right here. But let's say that you're in a situation like this where you have multiple different angles that you're being come at, and honestly, it feels like your characters here are going to die. The only thing that you can kind of do in terms of this is either pocket up into one corner and just pray that, again, you have someone like Cannaaaa who is tanky enough and doesn't die and is likely going to be the tankier of your DPS, assuming you're using someone like Odie or assuming you're using any other DPS here. Maybe it's, I don't know, someone like Viperion. In any case, though, although I only have one tank here, if I do want to take the aggro of anyone or of everyone on screen, all I have to do is put him in a position where he gets all the aggro. He's sitting here. Hopefully, I have a way to access the backline, or I have a way to deal additional damage here. Star Shard is going off. But again, look, they're all continuously trying to fight the Brutus. The Brutus is not dying. He finally does end up dying here. And of course, I don't end up clearing because Vala didn't end up being enough DPS. But like I just mentioned before, we did have a lot of time specifically right there to kind of throw out as much damage as I can. In this case, instead of Brutus, or in this case, instead of Vala, what I'm going to try using is someone like Floribel, or I may end up using someone like Odie because it felt like I had enough time to kind of throw out DPS. Even immediately right here, I've got my Odie's poison thrown out. And now look, now I get to move around, and you just saw right before that I failed the stage with Vala, but not the right DPS. Brutus was able to tank things for a little bit longer, and Cannaaaa was being hit on the side, but not enough to actually kill her, so that's helpful. And these were some of the strategies that I like to do when it comes to clearing. And outside of that, I think something that I've noticed, especially while doing the Trial of Abyss, is that no one team composition right now, at least from the characters that I have, feels super safe. Sometimes I have a higher exclusive equipment or exclusive weapon on one character, or my gear resonance or my resonance level isn't high enough. And even in this, you could probably argue that there are people that have run similar compositions or have lower levels but have beat higher level compositions. But in any case, all these things also kind of contribute to, again, how you play or how you want to approach the challenge content in this game. But, excuse me, from at least what I could tell, I've found that the best thing that you can do when you're struggling is to either change out your knights, or your tanks, I guess, or like your frontline character, move them around so that they are in isolated pairings so that they take all the aggro and you don't have your DPS leaking through after they maybe die or they come back to life. Or I've also found that, again, trying to pocket characters into a corner so you don't end up getting screwed up or anything feels best, at least from a progression sort of point of view. In any case, though, guys, of course, all the advice that I have right now is kind of dependent on what units you have. This is, of course, under the assumption that you have Thorin and Brutus. I think that Brutus and Thorin are some of the best knights, or I don't know why I keep saying knights. I think they're some of the best tanks for the game right now that I've found, especially when I'm trying to progress. But just keep in mind that sometimes your DPS can also take a beating a little bit, and it's not that, not that big a deal. You'll survive. Test this out and see how it does for you. But anyways, that's what I have for you. If you guys are still struggling and you're trying to rush to get to 240 resonance because you're trying to do the seasons, or if you're just trying to get resources so you can, I don't know, do more pulls. In any case, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned something. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Good night.